everyone, and welcome back to another True Crime Tuesday. I wasn't going to record a true crime video this week. I was going to do one next week, but I don't have time to record anything else. I worked until 10 p.m. last night, and it is currently 11:45 at night that I'm recording this, so I just had to get something out to you, and I had researched a case, so I figured why not just do it this week, and I'll do something else next week. Today I'm going to be talking about the disappearance of Heather Elvis. I think this is a pretty well-known case. When I looked it up, I found a lot of information on it. I had never heard of it, but I don't, necessarily hear that many cases from the US, but you might have heard of it because I think it's a pretty well-known case apparently. So Heather Elvis was 20 years old when she disappeared. She had 2 siblings and she really loved kids. She would very often volunteer at her local church to help out in the daycare center. And she also went on a missionary trip to Costa Rica. One of those where you build like houses for people, and she would also volunteer at the orphanage, and she had a good heart, she wanted to help people. She graduated from high school in 2011, and then she went on to try and get a degree in cosmetology. And it is during her studies that she worked as a waitress in the Tilted Kilt in Myrtle Beach. And here she met a man named Sidney Moore. I'm just gonna move my notes a little bit closer. Okay, now he was a handyman and he owned his own company. He basically fixed like professional restaurant appliances, and he did a lot of work in the Tilted Kilt, and so they were instantly attracted to each other. Heather would always talk about him to her roommate, and she really just acted like she was a schoolgirl in love. She was so into this guy. She even tweeted that she had wet dreams about him and that, she would love to do things to him. Like, she was just totally into this guy. However, Sidney was married to a woman named Tammy and had 3 children. Tammy apparently worked part-time as a travel agent, but I don't know if this was like actual part-time where she like went to an office, or if she just did it like every now and then from home, because I know that for the most part she was a stay-at-home mom. So Heather and Sidney had an affair for about 6 months, and in October of 2013 Tammy found out about it, and she was obviously extremely angry, but she started acting out so much. She began calling and texting Heather constantly. She would make Sidney call her while Tammy was in the room, and then she told Heather that she had to end things with her husband, and then she would give the phone to Sidney while she was sitting there basically waiting for either Heather or Sidney to end it so that she could hear that they were ending it. She just went off at her and basically started stalking her. She also put a password on Sidney's cell phone and didn't give it to him, so he could no longer get into his phone unless he asked for her permission. And she would also handcuff him to the bed every night so that he couldn't sneak out of the house without her noticing. She was also still harassing Heather and sending her threatening text messages. Heather at some point responded to her that she seemed a little obsessed with her and that she no longer had to worry about her, like it was over. She wasn't planning to, go out with Sidney anymore. But Tammy didn't stop. Now, November 5th is the last time that Sidney and Heather saw each other in person. On November 15th, Sidney, Tammy, and the kids went to Disneyland in California, and they were gone for a month, or almost a month. And this really helped Heather return back to normal. She, the stress from Tammy and everything she was doing was gone, so she started becoming more social again. She started dating, she started hanging out, like talking to her family a lot more again. She was basically picking up her life and moving on from this entire mess. In December, Heather's roommate left for the holidays. They were pretty close, they were really good friends, so they still spoke to each other on the phone a lot. And Heather told her that she was going out on a date. So on December 17th, she went out on a date. The guy picked her up at 7 p.m. They went for dinner. They drove around a little bit to look at the Christmas lights. And he also taught her how to drive a stick shift. She was very proud. She really enjoyed that, and she sent a picture of herself in the car with the stick shift to her roommate and to her dad. Apparently, it was like a running joke between her and her dad that she couldn't do it, and so she thought he would find it funny that she was doing it that night. And then her date dropped her back off at her apartment around 1 a.m. Now this is where it becomes a little bit heavy on timestamps. I left some out because I don't want to give you guys too many timestamps, but I'm going to try to give you an overview of the timeline. So at 1:35 a.m., Sydney calls Heather from a payphone. At 1:44 a.m., she calls her roommate, and she sounded very upset. She said that Sydney told her that he was going to leave his wife and that he wanted to see her. And her roommate was like, girl, you've been doing so well without him. Like, you're moving on. I don't want him to suck you back into this life. Like, don't do anything rash. Just go to sleep, think about it, and then decide what you want to do in the morning. And Heather was like, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm not going to make any decisions now. But at 2:29 a.m., Heather calls the payphone back, but there is no answer. These are a bunch of timestamps that I left out because she apparently left her apartment. They tracked her cell phone to some restaurant. I don't know exactly where it is, which is why I left it out. But she was there for a little while. She tried to call Sydney's cell phone a few times, but he didn't pick up. She then drove to a certain area, but returned. She turned around and went back to the restaurant. She stayed there for a little while longer, and then she went back home. She came back home at 3:19 a.m. And she tried to call Sydney's cell phone again, and the call was picked up. And then at 3:25 a.m., she leaves her apartment again and heads towards an area called Peachtree Landing, which is apparently like a little secluded wooden area that has like a boat dock. Her phone stops there at 3:37 a.m. She tried several times in a row to call Sydney's cell phone, but he didn't pick up. And then at 3:41 a.m., she makes another call to Sydney's cell phone that isn't picked up. And then at 3:42 a.m., there's no more activity on Heather's cell phone, which either means that she turned it off or it was turned off or that the battery died. Now, somewhere in between around 3:37, there are several surveillance cameras that pick up a black Ford or a dark Ford driving towards Peachtree Landing, coming from the direction of Sydney's home. And his family drives a dark Ford. And soon after Heather's phone died, those same surveillance cameras picked up the dark Ford again, leaving Peachtree Landing to the direction of Sydney's home. So on December 19th, which is 2 days later, Heather's car is found abandoned at Peachtree Landing. It was registered on her dad's name, so the police contacted him to ask what was going on with the car, and he took his spare keys, and they went down together to check it out. Now, they went into the car, they looked through it, they couldn't really find anything suspicious, so they let him take it home. Which is a little bit strange because while they didn't know that Heather was missing, or they didn't know that anything might have happened to her, it's still always a possible crime scene. The fact that they let this man in to like rummage through the car, and the fact that they let him take it home could have potentially destroyed a lot of evidence, so I find that a really weird decision. They searched the wooded area and the lake nearby, but they couldn't find anything. Now, they followed leads for 2 months, but they kept landing back on Sydney because of the whole situation. They obviously knew about the affair, they knew about the threatening text messages that Tammy had sent, so they kept going back to him. Now, during his first interviews, he had lied about making that call from the payphone. At first, he said that he never made it, but police had him on surveillance footage at that payphone, so he then confessed to making the call, but he said that he told Heather to leave him alone and to stop contacting him. And again, police said that that couldn't be true because they had her phone records and they had no evidence whatsoever that she had contacted him at all. According to her phone records, she hadn't spoken to him this whole time. The whole time that he was away with his family, she hadn't spoken to him. So they knew that that wasn't true. So when they asked him where he was that night, he said that he was handcuffed to the bed, as he had been every night. But since they had video surveillance of him at that payphone, they knew that that also wasn't true. He also couldn't explain the calls that Heather made to him that night. He claims that he didn't receive any of them, even though phone records showed that all of them went through, and she called his cell phone multiple times, and he claims he never got them. He also started making weird police claims that people were shooting at his car while he was out with his family with automatic weapons, but no proof of any bullets were ever found. They also claimed that Heather's father was threatening them, but there's no proof of that either. So on February 21st, the police searched Sydney and Tammy's house, and only 3 hours after the search, they were both arrested. So clearly police found something in the house that led them to believe that Sydney and Tammy did something to Heather. Now on February 24th, a press conference was held to say that Sydney was being charged for the murder of Heather, and that Sydney and Tammy kidnapped her. Now, I don't know to this day what exactly they found at their house. My best guess is that they might have found her cell phone, because to my knowledge, that was not found at the crime scene. So maybe they found it in their house. I don't know, but it was obviously something that led them to believe that Heather was murdered. In March 2016, however, the murder charges were dropped and the kidnapping charges were downgraded to pending. I'm not sure what that means. My guess is that they were still investigating the kidnapping and they couldn't charge them with kidnapping until they had more proof. But on June 20th, 2016, a trial began against Sydney on the kidnapping of Heather. However, it was a hung jury. Sydney then went on Facebook and made several posts about Heather, one of which stating that she was of no importance to him. She was just a girl that he slept with. And he also went on to accuse Heather's father of killing her. And he said that Heather had confided in him that her father sexually abused her as a child, which is really funny because she was just a girl that he slept with, yet he somehow had a deep enough conversation with her that she confided all these things into him. And on October 23rd, 2018, so only several months ago, Tammy's trial ended, and she was sentenced to 30 years in prison for the kidnapping of Heather. Now, there were some, I got my information from various places. There were some that said, well, we're expecting Sydney's trial to start soon, but we don't know yet when. However, I looked everywhere and I couldn't find anything about Sydney's trial. And from what I read, there was an article that I read, and it basically said that when the jury was hung on Sydney's trial, the judge called for a mistrial. And then further down in the article, it said that Sydney was basically acquitted of of the charge of kidnapping Heather. So I think that he's not going to be retried. I don't think he can. I think if he was acquitted, then he can't. If it was a mistrial, I don't know how that works. I kind of think after a mistrial, you can be tried again. But from everything I could find, it doesn't look like Sydney will be. However, I will say this. He was charged in March 2016 with obstruction of justice because he had lied multiple times when being questioned about Sydney's disappearance, about Heather's disappearance. So it could be, I believe that he was still in prison when Tammy was convicted, so it could be that they have to wait for him to get out before they're going to retry him. But I think that he is not going to be. I think that as soon as he gets out for the obstruction of justice, that he's basically going to be a free man. So I'm going to talk about some theories in this case because not everyone believes that Sydney and Tammy did this. So one theory is that she walked away herself because a few days before she went missing, she had tweeted that she wanted to get out of the small town. She wanted to get away from all this drama, and she was going to go to Thailand. And she even tweeted the price of an airline ticket to Thailand. However, she was 20 years old. She didn't have any money. She had just gotten a job as a makeup artist, which she was really excited about starting because that was her dream job. That's what she was studying for. That was her dream. And she'd just been on a date that she had a lot of fun on. She was very active on social media. Like, she was one of those girls, that would always tweet pictures of herself and how cute she was. And, she was 20. I'm not saying that she had a lot of confidence, but she acted like she had a lot of confidence. And she was so into her social media. I would find it strange that she would just one day to the next decide to go away and stop using it completely. So I don't see that happening. But that leads me to the next theory, which is that the guy she went on a date with had something to do with it. Now, there are some things he did that are a little bit suspicious. So when police first questioned him, he was very cooperative. He answered all their questions. He gave them an exact timeline of what they did on the date, and he took a polygraph test and passed. You guys don't know how I feel about polygraph tests, but he passed. Now, police found some discrepancies on Heather's cell phone records, or like where her phone pinged, between what he had said they were doing and between what they found from her phone. So they called him back in to ask him about the inconsistencies, and he shut down. He refused to cooperate anymore. He didn't want to answer any of their questions. He also went on to change the seats in his car. Like, right after she disappeared, he took out the seats and put in bucket seats. Now, maybe that's just something he wanted to do, but the timing is very suspicious. Like, right after she went missing, it also wipes out any DNA of her being in that car. And there was a picture of her in the car. So they knew she was in it, but they couldn't prove she was in it any other way because all the DNA would have been gone. Now, it could also very well be that he was worried that they were going to pin this on him, because I can understand that. You go on a date with someone and a few hours later they disappear. Police are going to look at you. So maybe he panicked and he was trying to do everything he could to not, be charged with this. And that's why he made some of those decisions. I don't know. Another theory is that her father killed her, which is actually a theory that Sydney came up with, but some other people believe it too. Now, first of all, the sexual abuse, I don't think is true because her siblings have never come out with it. She posted that, she sent that picture to a father of her in the car because she knew it would make him laugh. I don't think you do that to someone that you have a bad relationship with. But I will say this, her father made a Facebook post about 2 months before she went missing on how to best bury a body without it being noticed. That's not necessarily super strange. I mean, we all love true crime. We're all into weird things. If police were to look up stuff on my computer, they'd be like, what is this girl doing? But it is a little bit weird. I don't know. I'm sure we've all given thought about how you could dispose of a body, or like when we see a case, we could be like, oh, that was so stupid or something like that. But it's not something that you would post on Facebook. So that was a little bit strange. He was also accused of fraud regarding Heather's missing persons fund. People said that he used the money to pay off a mortgage and to buy a bunch of personal items. And he did live in Peachtree Landing. But I just don't think he would have done it. I mean, it was his daughter, and there's no proof of any of it, not of the fraud either. Police obviously looked into him. They would have looked into everyone, and they didn't once suspect him of doing this. And the one thing that makes me think that neither the date or the father did it is the phone calls. The one thing that ties Sydney and Tammy to this is the phone calls. My best theory, I guess what most people believe, but what I personally believe happened, is that Tammy forced Sydney to make that call to lure Heather out. I don't think he would have done this on his own, because I think he was happy enough to leave it alone. I think he was happy enough to not be in contact with Heather anymore and to just move on with his family. But she was obsessed. She was crazy. And I think she forced him to lure her out. She went to Peachtree Landing after making a call to his cell phone and someone picking up. It had to have been him, because she wouldn't listen to Tammy. She would only listen to him. Also, what I do find strange is that she would call his cell phone because Tammy had put a password on it so that he could only use it with her permission. She had told Heather that in one of the threatening texts that she sent her. Oh, he doesn't have a cell phone anymore. Like, I control it now. So I can understand that maybe you forget about that, but I still find it strange because he called her originally from a payphone. I think he did that because she knew about the cell phone and he didn't want to make it look suspicious that he was calling her from the cell phone. So he called her from the payphone because it's the only way that he could contact her. So the fact that she kept calling his cell phone, I think, is weird. Also, the fact that once he actually picked up, I still think that was him. It had to have been Tammy that was orchestrating all of this because she controlled his cell phone. If he picked up, it's because she allowed him to pick up. So I think it's pretty clear to me that they did something to her, and sadly I do think that she's dead. I just don't know if we're ever gonna find that out. I do still wonder what police found that led them to arrest them. I do still wonder if Sydney's ever gonna get tried for her kidnapping. I don't think so, but I don't know. I'm happy to see that Heather is going to jail for 30 years because she sounds like a horrible person. I mean, I get it. I get that if you're a housewife and your life is basically your husband and your kids, and a housewife is such a degrading term, I think it's a hard job, and I think you are sacrificing a lot to be there for your husband and your kids. So if your husband then has an affair with a really young girl, I understand that that really hurts you, but there are different ways to deal with it. And I don't understand killing her. He has as much, if not more, blaming his than she did. Because, yes, she knew he was married, I'm sure. She shouldn't have done it, but he's the one who was married. He definitely shouldn't have done it. So you can punish your husband in a normal matter and leave the girl alone. Or you can leave your husband, but to do something to her, I mean, that just takes it way too far. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Yeah, let me know in the comments down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet,